What you said at the debate, can you explain a bit more about what would mean to transgender people like yourself to leave the European Union?
So, as it stands, the only way that we got the Gender Recognition Act, which allows us to change our birth certificates, is by suing the UK government. The only way we got equitable pension rights is by suing the UK government. So a lot of trans people are concerned that if we leave the EU, that we will not simultaneously, but we will also leave the European Convention on Human Rights. And if we leave... And if we leave the European Convention on Human Rights, we also leave the European Court of Human Rights, which means those decisions will no longer be legally enforceable. So we're not saying it will happen, but there's very definitely a concern that were we to leave the EU and then go on to leave the European Convention, that we would then return to a situation eventually where trans people specifically would no longer have the right to change their birth certificate and would no longer have equitable pension rights.
Yeah. And in terms of one of the lead panelists made a comparison with what's happening in LGBT rights in, for example, places like Nigeria and Uganda. What do you say to that? Because obviously right now we're talking about the UK, we're not talking about...
Of course.
What would you say to that?
I would say that the only way that we're going to improve the rights of other countries, and specifically within the EU, the fact that we have taken those cases then provides precedent for trans people in other countries within the EU to then go to their governments, well, we have precedent for the European Convention. It's not binding, but it does carry a lot of weight. So, for example, in Sweden, they require trans people to be sterilised. And a lot of trans people in Sweden have used case law that is not legally binding but is persuasive to try and change that, and the same has happened in other countries as well. And we've seen situations equally where LGBT people in, Belgrade Pride, the EU made it a requirement that Belgrade police had to police that pride so that they weren't getting attacked by far-right mobs anymore. So we have a massive amount of say, as a country that is more progressive on LGBT rights, we have a massive responsibility and a massive amount of persuasive power for other EU countries. Equally, when you look at countries like Nigeria, like India, like Jamaica, a lot of the LGBT laws they have that are discriminatory stem from the times when they were in the empire. So the reason that those laws exist is because we put them there, and then we left without changing them. So we also have a responsibility to Commonwealth countries. That won't change whether we're in or out of the EU. We still have that responsibility to say, we gave you this messed up law, and now we're going to ask you to change it.
Right, in or out, and just really, really quickly, why?
Because I believe in human rights, I believe in free movement of people, and I believe we should expand free movement of people to as wide a base as possible.